Good morning, everyone, and thanks for joining for us another session of Azure Power Lunch. Um, just a quick heads up that this call is being recorded and we place our recordings on our YouTube channel. So if you don't want to be recorded, you may want to drop off now. And today's session is about Azure API Center. So let me just quickly go through the agenda. So we're going to talk about what is Azure API Center and what are some of the use cases, benefits, and we will have a quick demo, just like we always do. First of all, Azure API Center, it's a new service which is in public preview. So it's a brand new service. It's in public preview. It's all about inventory management and cataloging of the APIs. And just want to mention that um, why this is important. I mean, most organizations are heterogeneous in a sense that they use different types of tools. So not every organization is going to be just using API management for everything. They may have, uh, they may have other tools that they are using. They may have APIs. Uh, uh, I mean, for API management. So they may have maybe using other tools. They may be using um, for example, they may be just running API on servers. They may not be using any API management infrastructure. Okay, so that's where it becomes challenging of to how to uh, kind of find out what APIs are available, what API needs to be built, what is the state of those APIs, things like that. That's where um, API Center comes into picture. Okay, as I said, there's a clear differentiation between API management, which is your API gateway, the ability to kind of apply policies to the APIs, more of a runtime kind of infrastructure. This one is more of a catalog, inventory management. Okay, so we have to have a clear differentiation there. And at this moment, this one is in public preview. So there is um, no timeline associated with the GA, but there is no price as well. So at this moment, while it's in public preview, it's free. Okay. So this is some of the benefits. So how it applies, what are the use cases? So first of all, you have the what we call like API manager. These are mostly IT related roles who are responsible for governance of the API or microservice infrastructure. So their goal is what APIs are available and how those APIs are used inside the organization. And they wanna, I mean, the first before they can go to the second, they need to know what APIs are, what state they are in. So one thing is that they can send email to the entire organization to find out what APIs they are creating. Another one is use a tool like API Center. Make sure every API is cataloged over there uh, with the appropriate metadata, and we'll take a look in the demo what it's all about. And then then they will be able to see what state they're in, and are there any APIs that are needed by external customer or internal customer that are missing, and make a request for those APIs. So they can do that. Second one are application developers. These are the people who are developing application, and the their goal is to they can be um, for example internal developers or external developers. They want to know what APIs are available, and especially in an organization, if there are there are app developers and they want to see what APIs are available for them to develop apps. If they don't find an API there in that list, they can request that. Okay. And the third one are actual API developers. So once again, it's important to them that they can identify gaps and avoid replication. So the last thing you want to do is create duplicate APIs. So, I have an API, nobody knows about it, but then the other person created the same API, spent a lot of time, have almost exactly the same feature. Instead, we could have worked together if that API was registered in the API center to see, okay, that API, uh, is already available. So we could have worked on enhancing it instead of creating a replica. Okay, and at the same time, um, if you are, it helps you identify gaps, like what gaps you have in your, API landscape. Okay. So, any questions? So once again, here are some of the key capabilities that are available. And I think it will be more obvious as we will go through the demo. What are some of the key capabilities? And we will go through like what are the steps, how you want to use the API Center, you know, and we will go through these steps one by one to make sure that we are uh, appropriately taking advantage of that too. So as I said, it's all about inventory management. That's the key thing. Then how APIs are represented, their open API. For example, if they are open API, their open API specification, any documentation, and I think the key game changer here are the metadata properties. Because with these properties, you assign metadata properties, so they will allow you to search the APIs which support certain metadata properties. Think of it this way. Let's say that you are creating a set of properties like what is the API type, what is the API audience, and things like that, or and then you are applying these properties to your APIs, and then people can go in and um, discover, like, okay, this is, I was looking for an API that is for education, or I was looking for an API that is for hospitality, based on your organization's makeup, you know and then based on that you can find that information, and you can query the API based on that metadata. So this is attaching that metadata, and you will see the concept of environments as well. And actually, let's go on the next slide. So this is some of the key concepts. I know this is a little busy slide, but just think about it. You have an API, that's the top level API. Of course, you have an API version, a version 1, 2. I mean, you're all familiar with API version. Then you have the environment. Environment is where your API is deployed. It can be an API management, it can be a server or third party API service, all of that. And just keep in mind, this is not the kind of a storing, like, okay, you're not gonna uh, use API Center for exactly running the API. You need that information to get to the API, and then you can run it. Okay, so there's no runtime component in here. You're not going to take the API Center address and start calling the API. This will, think of it, it stores all the information where those APIs are located so you can start using them. So this, just be careful about it. And what are the deployments? Uh, is it what environments it is deployed? Then you have the metadata and metadata schema and all that. And I think once we see the demo, I think it will be clear. So please let me know if you have any questions before we jump into the demo. Okay.
So Naveed, the concept of
Yes.
workspace is coming to the API management, right? So you have similar concept here in the
Yeah,
workspace
that's right.
as well.
I mean, I think the workspace is here as well, but for some reason, it's not in the preview at the moment. They are planning to bring it as well in here, but it's not that yet in the preview. So I just want to mention it here that this is coming, yes, to this tool as well. Okay. So first of all, just wanna be a caution. If you go into a um, portal, and let's say if I'm gonna go in here and I'm look for API Center, you will not find it. You have to go in and you have to register for the public preview. There are some public preview which are open to everyone. There's some public preview where you have to register. So what you have to do is you have to go in, register. There are some specific steps there, and they will send you all the information where you have to register some of the resource provider. Once you register that, then you will be able to create the API center. Got it? So if you just go in your subscription and try to do that, you won't be able to do that. I have provided a link in the documentation which goes over uh, the information on how to request and it's public. So that link provides you the address, web address of the form where you provide your information, and then you will get an email which has all the information. And if you see um, in the portal link, look, you see it has a API Center preview. Uh, Hopefully, everybody can see that. And the goal of this is that with this, you can now, for example, here, if I go in, if I type in API Center, look, API Centers show up, because this is the preview portal link. I'm sure you have used it in other app, different type of Azure Services preview sometime. So the preview is available in, the main link. Sometimes you have a special link for that particular, a special portal for that, and that's what the special portal is. Got it? So that's that. So first, this is an overview. Basically, here it is, pretty straightforward service. It's not available in all regions, so that's why I'm creating an East US since it's public preview. So that's the case. And let's start with, first of all, metadata schema. Okay. So the goal is you need to create certain properties, but because the thing is, what you're going to do, that you're going to attach these properties to different entities like API, like environment and things like that. So it will help you find those things out when you search for that metadata. That's the goal of this metadata. Think of it as special tags kind of thing, you know. So let's add a property and we are going to call it API. Um, API purpose something. Okay, okay. So we do that, and then you can provide description just for the sake of simplicity. We remove that, and this is important. What type of property is that? Is it a Boolean, number, object? I mean, object mean you can have um, have kind of a hierarchy of things. So you can add object properties, things like that, or I can take predefined choices. Okay. And we can define predefined choices. So purpose of the API is, um, you know, um, find person. So let's say these are um, kind of a different type of API we are creating. My name in the company directory or something like that. And then, so let's say, we are creating those type of API. Find manager. Okay, so that's simple. So let's start with that. Then we do next. What are the assignment? Where it is applicable. Is it applicable to deployments? Is it applicable to environment? It is applicable to API. So let's say we make them required everywhere. Okay. And then we do next. and let's create it. Okay, so now we have two um, properties. One is uh, purpose, one is API purpose, and then line of business, things like that. So these kind of and it will vary from organization to organization. The type of APIs they're building, that's what dictate what type of um, properties they want or what type of organization they are. So let's add a new API. And just keep in mind when you're registering an API, this has nothing to do with API import. It's not like you define a open API. This is all about cataloging the API, where the API are. Okay. So this require kind of I would say, manual work. So let's say to do API, API type is REST. It's a REST API, and the summary it's to do task API, right? And then we have same thing here. I'm a lazy person, so I'm just gonna. What is the version title? And that's important. Always look at these kind of informational pop-ups. So it says, so we're gonna call it initial version, okay? And then we're gonna call it. This one is of shape like 2030 8 or so. That's what I'm gonna do. 2023 8 dash 01. That's the version. What is the life cycle? Yeah, we are still developing this API. Okay, the format of the API, it's what type of format it is. It's Open API, so we use that. What is the version? Version is we call it 0.1, so it's still being uh, developed. And then you upload the Open API document for that. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to open this document and I'm going to load it here. And that's where you can add more information. Okay. Um, and this is important as you feel kind of that more information need to be added. Let's say you call it um, docs and that's it. That's the only field that is required, and then whatever you can put in here, like all the documentation, and then you can add more information so people who are trying to call this API they know more about it, and then add a point of contact to the API. So that can be a person's email address and URL. So you can add that. We're not going to add it here just for the sake of simplicity. And I'm going to call it marketing API. Okay. And then I'm going to select it's a find manager, find person. I mean, I'm just picking this property so you can assign it. Okay. And let's create it. So now it's gonna create this API. So now you have two APIs here. One is in design, one is in development, and that's how you build your catalog. Just keep in mind that this is a manual way of doing it. There's always REST API and things like that where you can automate that process of populating this information. I mean, this can be possibly as since everything is delivered through API, you can do it from your DevOps environment as well. Okay. And once again, let's take a look at this API one more time once it's created. You see, it's interesting. It shows us now two pieces. One is an overview and one is versions. Okay. So if you can go in version, you can add more versions to it. So you can keep versioning this API saying, this is the initial version, this is version two, things like that. Got it? So you can have one API with multiple version, and definitely as you are enhancing the API as it's going through different stages of its life cycle, things will these properties will change. Okay. Any questions? So this is, I mean, I know this may you may think, this is boring. This is not coding. This is just kind of a kind of a bookkeeping. But You know, this is an important part of your API management, kind of a life cycle and governance, you know, because if you don't keep track of your APIs, then you may have a lot of APIs, but nobody's using them, or a lot of APIs, but nobody's finding them, or kind of there's a huge gap between the consumers of and the developers of the APIs and things like that. You may have a lot of wasted effort, but with this tool, you can catalog all that information. And now let's go into the environment. What is the environment? Let's create a new environment. Title is we call it performance test, and that's, by the way, can be anything. I cannot spell right today. And this is the environment type. What type of environment this is? This is, we call it staging, or let's do testing. What type of server it is, and we can call it once again performance testing. That this is a performance testing environment. And what type of server that is? Okay, these are all the API management, MuleSoft, Kong API, Kubernetes, AWS, Azure Compute Service, that your all your VMs and things like that. Okay, or your app service or your function, because they're all part of Azure Compute Service. Okay, so let's say it is coming from Azure API Management. What is the URL? It's not needed, so we can ignore it. Developer URL, we can ignore that as well. Uh, so this, and what is the API purpose? Since we said it has to be, yes, so it's find manager, and all that, and just showing that there is a metadata that is related to now environment, and let's create that environment. So this environment has been created. Let's go in there, and you can see you can edit the data, you can change all those things. So think of it. This not only, first of all, we have to create the metadata, then we have to create the APIs, and then we have to create the environments, and then attach those possibly to the APIs. The idea is that you have a catalog of everything in your organization with related to API, which is useful to end consumers. Because if somebody is trying to call API, they want to know, okay, what is the API? How does it look like? What versions are there? What environment that is running on? They can find all that information based on um, looking at this catalog. Okay. So, any questions, folks? Okay. And as I said, just keep in mind that this is in um, public preview. Let me just give me 1 second. Let me just open the public preview site and share it on the screen. Yeah, yeah. So let me go into the tutorial. So this is the public preview. And if you go in, it's all the benefits here. And then in the tutorial, this is that. So basically, first of all, you have to request it. Okay. And once you get the request approved, uh, then these are the access restrictions. So if we go in here, you have to uh, kind of follow these documentation step, approve it, all of that. And once you approve it, then you will get an email, and then you will be able to go through all of that. Okay, create an API center and all the metadata schema and things like that. So just keep that in mind. So with that, last time, any questions, folks? Okay. So since there are no questions, I hope everybody has a wonderful weekend and hope to see you in another session of Azure Power Lunch. Have a great weekend.